Okay, we're live on two platforms. I'm just going to share it on two more, and then we will be good to go. Someone gave me a thumbs up on Facebook, so I know that we're working there. Whoever that was, thank you for the thumbs up. Logged on a minute early so that we can get it all shared and get, Kayla Gittel. Thank you for the envelope today, Kayla Gittel. It was very gracious of you. Good bracha for your parents of blessed memory. Okay. Trying to guess what we're going to talk about. Robert, you make the rabbi's life complicated because you learn so much during the week. We have to find new novel ideas to share that hopefully no other rabbis on your list of rabbis taught you already. I don't want you to be bored.
No.
It's okay. I'm not that concerned. I'm having fun.
He's actually worried about that.
Don't worry about anything.
Okay.
If I ever get boring, Robert, just stand up and leave, and I'll know that I gotta up my game.
No, testing. Have him teach the class. Testing. Hello.
Rabbi, why don't you have him teach the class?
Who, Robert? I should ask Robert to teach the class?
No.
You're going to give him a heart attack. We don't want to do that.
Hi, Robert. Bye.
Okay, that's Jan from Arizona. It's Baruch.
Hey.
Hashem should send you a refuah shleiman. I'm so glad you know how to use Zoom. I don't think I've ever
seen me?
Zoom. I can hear you, and now I'm going to mute you.
Oh, good. Mute me. Oh, I just muted.
Mute. Everyone should mute themselves. Very good. Okay. We are live, and we're going. It is Parshas Truma. We're going to begin on page 483 in the life chumash that we use here at the shul. I'd like to begin by dedicating our study tonight to the memories of Yarden. To the memories of Shiri, Kfir, and Ariel Bibas, and their memory were finally laid to rest today in the Holy Land. And I'd like to dedicate it in honor of Yarden Bibas, that Hashem should give him all the courage that he needs and all the strength that he needs. I mean, he showed pretty incredible strength today, but today is one thing and tomorrow is a very different thing. And everything he said at the funeral today should come true, and that they should always be near him, and he should always have that strength to keep going. I don't know how people do it. It's hard for any of us to fathom that, but it's our blessing from here in Bozeman to them in Israel that the Bibas family has all the comfort in the world, and our Torah study should be in to elevate the souls, to bless the souls of Shiri, Kfir, and Ariel. We are in Parshas Truma. And here's where the Torah portion makes a lot of people crazy. This is where we went last week. We had all this action and the mitzvahs and the giving of the Torah, and then don't kill your neighbor's horse and don't mess with your neighbor's ox. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of building the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the home for Hashem. So I'd like to read just a few verses right in the beginning of chapter 25, so the top of 43. Then we're going to have a phenomenal discussion from the Rebbe's teachings. God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel and have them dedicate to me a contribution. Take my offering from every person whose heart inspires him to generosity. These are the types of contribution that you shall collect from them. Gold, silver, and copper, turquoise, purple, and crimson wool, linen and goat's hair, ram's skin dyed red, multicolored tachash skin, and acacia wood. And then he continues, oil for the eternal lamp, spices for the anointing oil for the incense fumes, shoam stones and filling stones for the apron and for the breastplate. And then he says the general rule, they should make a sanctuary dedicated to me and I will dwell among them, which is always the great teaching about it. It says among them. It should have said in it. I should, right? Read the verse. They should make a sanctuary dedicated to me, and I should dwell in the sanctuary. But it doesn't say the same. It says dwell in them, which is the famous teaching in the Talmud, and it's elaborated in Chassidus, that Hashem wanted a tabernacle and a temple, but the ultimate place of where he dwells is in them, in the people. So even when there's no temple, God continues to dwell in the miniature temple within ourselves. It's a famous song that one of the Jewish poets back in, I'm guessing about 800 years ago or so, said, Bilvavi Mishkan Evna. It's a beautiful, beautiful tune with beautiful lyrics. The tune goes, Bilvavi Mishkan Evna, Ladar Kevoidoi, which means in my heart, I will create a tabernacle for the honor and glory of God. And I'll put in that tabernacle, I'll put an altar. And what am I going to sacrifice on that altar? What am I going to do with the altar? And then I'm going to sacrifice the evil inclination. What fire am I going to use? How am I going to light it? It says I'll use the fire that Abraham lit to light the Akedah when the fire at the Akedah, when he took his son Yitzchak to the Akedah. In other words, the sacrifice of the Jewish people is going to be the fire. And with that fire, we'll have the ability to extinguish the negative forces, but about creating a temple within our own heart. First of all, if you text me after, I'll send you a link. It's an old song from JEP, Jewish. JEP is an organization that existed in the 50s and 60s, and they created this tune with the lyrics that is just beautiful, heartwarming. But that's a side note. So the ultimate tabernacle is in our heart. But in reality, they had to build a tabernacle, and it says they used acacia. Sometimes it's translated as acacia, sometimes it's translated as cedar wood. We've had conversations here at the shul, especially when Joe Sharber, Batya's husband, was still alive. He would have these debates about how which wood survives better and all the scientific stuff. For the purpose of today's class, but there was acacia or cedar is not that important. The point is they had wood. And Rashi says right away, and I'm going to read the Hebrew and translate. Rashi says, "Ume'ayin hayu lehem b'midbar." Where did they get wood to build the tabernacle in the desert? That's what Rashi asks. Piresh Rabbi Tanchuma. Rabbi Tanchuma explains that Yaakov Avinu tzafa beruach hakodesh, that Jacob, our patriarch, saw with divine providence, divine spirit, divine vision. Sha'asidim Yisrael livnes mishkam amidbar, that the Jewish people are going to have to build a tabernacle in the desert. He brought the seedlings of cedar or acacia wood to Egypt. He planted it in Egypt. He commanded his children and grandchildren, they should take it with them when they leave Egypt. It's a beautiful Rashi. And if you listen to my little clip I did today on the parasha, which I put on social media, so you think that I'm about to say the same thing. I'm not. I'm going to mention part of what I said today at the end of the class, but that's not where the majority of the class is going. I try my best not. He's going, bro. You're good. I try my best not to be repetitive, and so especially on the same day. So we're going in a different direction. And what I share with you tonight is from volume 31 of the Rebbe's edited talks. It's a very interesting discussion. And Mitchell, this is what happens when we come late. Can't you come on time?
Yeah.
How much does it cost to come an extra 7 minutes early? Okay. Now, we got the interruption out of the way, and assuming no one else knocks on the window, we should be good to go. So the Rebbe in this talk asked the following question. Why does Rashi's job, and I've mentioned this at many classes, Rashi always expresses that his role as a commentator of the Torah, I come to teach you the basic understanding of the verse. Nachmanides goes mystical, this one goes this direction. Rashi tells you, my modus operandi, my reasoning for commentary is to give you the most basic understanding of the verse. And so Rashi should have given us a more basic explanation of where the wood came from. What would be a more basic explanation?
I carried it from Egypt.
That's not the basic explanation. Of course not. The Jews are in the desert. It's almost 6-7 months later. They're schlepping around beams of wood, piles of wood. The simple explanation would be either that they purchased it from merchants that were selling product in the desert, which was, we know from other items that there was merchants around that they could purchase things from. When later in Deuteronomy, this big discussion, when they had animals and where they get animals from, one of the simple explanations of the Medrash says there were merchants. Everybody knows how to make money. So you find out there's 2 million people living a few hundred miles, a few 50 miles away, right? They're hanging out in the Sinai desert. So whether it's from Saudi Arabia, from modern day Saudi Arabia, or from Libya, from Egypt, or even from Israel, The merchants came, they want to sell things. So why can't we say the more logical explanation is that they got the wood from the merchants, or that they found an area that had some, a forest of some sort, and they went to chop down some wood. By the way, there are other commentaries that explain it that way. What's the issue?
I read, they planted the families, planted it on the way, so they had a path with the falling the wood. I thought I heard that somewhere.
That what?
That the trees, they planted the trees.
I never heard that in my life. So, I mean, that sounds good, but first of all, it wouldn't help if you're chopping it down to build the tabernacle, then there goes your path.
Yeah.
So I never heard that. And so there are two options of having a more basic logical explanation, and given there are commentaries that go that route. You have a forest, you have some merchants. Also, we're not talking about an insane amount of wood. So why not just get it locally? Meaning get it where you are. Why does Rashi, and again, the Medrash is a beautiful Medrash about Yaakov planting it 200 years earlier, right? But why go there if your job is to explain the basic understanding of the verse? So the Medrash is beautiful, but why is it in Rashi? Why can't we just read it in the Medrash and Rashi stick to the most basic explanation? Unless Rashi felt a necessity to go down this route because it is the most basic explanation, based on information that I'm about to share that Rashi was obviously familiar with because it's right in the verse. What am I referring to? Yeah, I'm talking about acacia trees. So if you look at right at the beginning at verse 2, right, it says, speak to the children of Israel and have them dedicate to me a contribution. Take my offering from every person whose heart inspires him to generosity. And in Hebrew, it says, V'yichu li truma, take for me a contribution. From each person that's donating, take the contribution. And this is the contribution you should take from them. So there's three times in this first two verses of the parsha, meaning the verse 2 and 3 of the parsha, that mention the word v'yikhu. It's all about taking the contribution from the Jewish people. Rashi, therefore, was forced to read these verses and understand them to mean that the only action that was missing from building the tabernacle and getting the items for the tabernacle was just taking it from them, meaning it was there already. You don't take something from someone if it's not there yet. You need them to go and get it and schlep it and cut it and build it. The fact that in the same verse, there's 3 times that it says in Hebrew, v'yitchu, just take it from them, that means that they have it, and all you got to do is take it from them. Take the contribution from them. They didn't have to go purchase it. They didn't have to go find it from other places. The only action that you were left to do was take it from them. Now, Rashi didn't have to be a rocket scientist, although he was. He just needed to learn the verses and take each word of the Torah seriously. And if it says 3 times in those verses, the Yikhu, it means something. So Rashi comes along and says, well, if that's the case, if I read the verses and it says that basically all they had to do is take it from the Jews, so what's Rashi's question? Where did they have wood in the desert? We know that they just took it from them, but where the heck did they get the wood from? They were traveling from Egypt to Israel. People generally, when they travel, don't take big beams of wood and trees along with them. And yet over here, it seems like all they had to do was take it from the Jews. Where the heck did they get wood from? And why were they schlepping it with them in the desert? It makes no sense. That's why Rashi comes along and says that this is where they had it from. That our great patriarch Jacob, 200 plus years earlier, recognized that the Jewish people are going to be through a very harsh exile. And they're going to need wood, and they're also going to need to build a tabernacle. And so he planned in advance to make sure they have it with them, so that when they leave Egypt, they can take it with them, because he commanded them to take it with them. And that's how Rashi answers that question of where they had it. They had it. So it's not, they had it because Jacob made it available for them and told them to take it with. So you had a question, why were they schlepping wood in the desert? Which clearly they were, because the verses make it sound like they had it accessible. All you got to do is take it from them. And that's how they had it. They had it because someone had the foresight.
As a commandment.
He commanded his family, not a biblical commandment, not a godly commandment. But Jacob, before he died, commanded his children. I'm sure they commanded their children that when they leave Egypt, they should take these trees with them. But this actually, says the Rebbe, explains something else that people don't pay attention to. Again, in Judaism, every letter, not every word, every letter, every vowel, the juxtaposition of verses, the juxtaposition of Rashi.
In America,
For sure, numerical value. For sure, then we're going way overboard. But yes, no, you're right. Numerical value is phenomenal. I actually said it this morning. Actually, acronyms. Everything is exact. But what the Rebbe says is, if you look at Rashi, Rashi starts off with the words "U me'ayin haya lahem bamidbar." Where did they have wood for them in the desert? Remember, I mentioned at the sermon on Shabbos, for those that were here, that the parsha began ve'ela hamishpatim, and these are the statutes, the laws. Right? Anytime it starts with a vav in Hebrew, the vav means and. Why does Rashi begin the Rashi to explain where the wood came from with the letter vav? Ume'ayin, and from also, where do they get wood? What do you mean also? What is he referring to? What is a continuation of? As if it's somehow Rashi is continuing a conversation that he had previously in Rashi. So the Rebbe says exactly. He is continuing. He's explaining how he got it. What does that mean? The earlier Rashi was addressing the turquoise and the crimson wool, which were other items that needed to be donated. And when you look at, if you read the verse without any commentary, it says Tchelas and Argaman. Tchelas is turquoise and Argaman is crimson wool. You would assume that these are colors that you use to dye. You have a color of crimson wool, like a dye, like a paint, and you have Tchelas, you have turquoise. Well, not in this case, but no. Huh? I was just saying, Rashi addresses those two. It includes all of them, the Tchelas and Argaman, the crimson wool and the turquoise, and you would assume that they were just dyes, that the Jews carried the dyes with them and they were schlepping. So Rashi's bothered by that. Where in the world do the Jews carry? Where did they get buckets of dye that they're schlepping with them in the desert? Did they also take that? Liquid dye, buckets of dye with them from Egypt? And that's why Rashi says about the turquoise and the crimson wool, that it wasn't, they didn't take buckets of dye. They had wool that was already dyed in many, many different colors. Meaning in Egypt already, they had so many sheep, so much flock, that already then they were sharing the wool and creating different colors of wool, some crimson wool, some purple, some this, some that. And so they weren't schlepping the actual buckets of dye in the desert. They were schlepping wool that was in various colors. Oh, so Rashi already dealt with that, explaining that it wasn't buckets of dye, it was the actual wool. Now that Rashi said that they obviously weren't schlepping dye with them in the desert, they only schlepped the wool, comes along Rashi and says, with a vav, the ayin and also where did they get wood? In other words, if you're telling me they didn't schlep the dye, then where the heck did they get the wood from? It's actually a direct continuation of the conversation of what they did and they didn't schlep with them in the desert. But here is where I'm going to share in a little bit more lengthy the idea that I shared on this morning's little 2-3 minute parsha clip. Because we already explained where they got the wood from, that it was because Jacob had the foresight and the fortitude to do that for his family, which I think in itself tells you everything you need to know about the Jewish people. The Gemara says that one of the sages walked by and they saw an old man planting a date tree. He said to them, a date tree, it takes 70 years to grow dates. You're an old fellow. He says, yeah, I'm not planting it for myself. Planting it for my children and my grandchildren, just like my parents and grandparents did it for me. And in Judaism, that's a very, very big value. In American selfish value, it's all about us. Right? We get married, we make agreements where you're protecting yourself from the person you're married to. It's really a good start on a relationship. I need to protect myself from the person I officially love with every fiber of my being, except I put 32 pages of documents to make sure I'm protected against the so-called love. If you want to know, I don't have any documents. I have a ketubah. That's it. There's no documents. You get married, she can have whatever she wants. It's all hers. Sei mir gesund. But
And then when you give her a get, she gets the ketubah.
she gets a ketubah bag again. You get bupkas. So you have people who are very, very, they think very much in the short term. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it does, because they lack bitachon in Hashem. I was learning this morning with my Chavrusa Shia. I was learning duties of the heart, Taibas Alavavis, Rabbeinu Bachya, and he says people want to make their plans for the next 50 years, and God kind of smiles. 50 years? How do you even know you're going to live 50 years? I'm in charge of that one, God says. Like, you plan for today. You serve me today, I'll take care of you today. You're planning for the next 100 years. Like, you're very confident that you're running the show. So in America, we have a very, very, whether we like it or not, by the way, it's not a degrading thing. It comes with capitalism, and it comes with freedom, and it comes with independence. We are very, very selfish. And if you don't like the word selfish, you could use, we're very into self-care. It's all about us. In Judaism, you are very much part of it, but part of every conversation is about what it does for the next generation and the generations that follow. So first of all, when you see that Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, with everything he had on his plate, right? His wife Rachel died when she was very young. Joseph was officially dead to him, and then sold. He had to work for his crazy uncle Laban for 20 plus years. He had to run away from his brother Esau. He had a life that every time I always say, if you ever think your life is bad, just think of Joseph, Jacob, and you're good. You'll realize perspective-wise, you're doing great. Jacob is now schlepping to Egypt to finally meet his son, who he hasn't seen in 22 years. And what's on his mind?
Trees.
We got to schlep trees from Israel to Egypt, because one day they're going to leave and they're going to need wood for the tabernacle. But it was more than that. And that's where Chassidus comes in and really adds like an extra layer of juice and deliciousness to this statement of Rabbi Tanchuma. And that is, first of all, Jacob could have planted trees in Egypt without schlepping the seedlings from Israel. He could have gotten, his son was the viceroy. He could have gotten some trees in Egypt and planted it. No, he wanted it to be with seedlings from Israel. And he wanted them to take the trees with them out. Yes, chop down the trees before you leave and take it with you. Because he was there not only to give them the actual wood that they needed for the tabernacle, he was giving them the greatest hope that they needed during that 200 years, but really the final 80 years of harsh exile. They needed hope. Everyone needs hope. Hope is not a slogan, and hope is not a bad thing. It's a recognition that tomorrow could be better, and that you learn to believe that tomorrow could be better. And when you're being tortured in a tormented, tyrannical slavery that the Jews experienced under Pharaoh, you can lose hope very, very quickly. When babies are being used as cement in the walls, and Jewish women are being abused, and Jewish men are being harshly abused. Maybe even worse was the Jewish men, what they had to deal with, especially after Moses went to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh made their work 10 times harder. It's not enough to build the buildings, you'll make the bricks. Right? That was the response that Pharaoh gave when Moses came. You lose hope. In other words, you also stop believing that you're ever going to get out. Is this ever going to change? The greatest punishment that slavery or captivity or war creates is that people lose hope that it's ever going to change for the better. People in the Soviet Union never believed that things could change. And yet when the moment was ready for it to change, you never saw a society change that quickly. In our lifetimes, we saw that. People always wonder, how's Mashiach going to come? In 1 minute, everything's going to change. No, in 1 second. How's that possible, Rabbi? I was like, excuse me, did you live through 1991? 1989? How long did it take for the Berlin Wall to come flying down? How long did it take for the Iraqis to start pulling down statues of Saddam Hussein? And what about a few months ago? How long did it take for the Syrians to send their big dictator who they always loved so much? And you think it can't happen in North Korea? Right now, you ask every American, can that happen in North Korea? Oh, no. It happened in Egypt, and it happened in Syria, and it happened. Now, it doesn't mean the outcomes are always wonderful. Sometimes you take down a bad guy and a worse bad guy becomes in charge. But that's not my point. My point is that Yaakov Avinu from the day he was leaving Israel to go down to Egypt, and he knew with divine vision that his children are going to leave Egypt and they're going to need to build a tabernacle. He wanted not only to give them the ability to build a tabernacle, he wanted to give them the hope that they deserved while they were in exile. So he planted it with seedlings from Israel to remind them that they will go to Israel. They will eventually make it back to Israel. And while they're in the exile, in the harshest of moments, they need to always remember that they're going to get out of here. And there's going to be a day that these big beams of wood will be used for something that God will want you to use it for, and you will be free to do that. They didn't know about the sanctuary. Those were details that came later. But yes, that it's going to be needed, and you're going to be using them en route to Israel. And the Rebbe was always, it's called medayik b'shma, which is a Talmudic term where you always, you not only learn the teaching, but you focus on the rabbi that's saying the teaching and how his name is connected to the story. Rashi tells us the name of the rabbi. What's the name of the rabbi that teaches us this whole thing about Yaakov bringing the wood? His name is Rabbi Tanchuma. What does Tanchuma mean in Hebrew? Tanchuma means from the word nichumim, nachem, to comfort, to bring solace. The name of like when you go to a Shiva house in Hebrew, it's called Menachem Oval. I'm going to be Menachem, to comfort the mourner. Jacob did what he did, but who teaches us that what Jacob did? The rabbi's name is Rabbi Tanchuma, a rabbi that represented the idea of solace and comfort. And the greatest solace and comfort for the Jewish people in Egypt was to know that there was an ancestor of ours, a patriarch of ours that cared about us, that guided us, that thought about us 200 years ago, and is there to remind us even after he's gone, remind us that redemption is not only possible but probable, and it will happen. And when it will happen, you will take this wood with you. Everyone needs hope. People very easily lose hope, and the reason so many people lose hope is because they've created either unrealistic expectations about what life is supposed to be. So when you live in a life where you always want instant gratification, of course you're going to be clutching all day and losing hope. But the other part is that there's a lot of tsaros in the world. There's a lot of challenges. And people don't have guidance. They didn't grow up learning Torah. They didn't grow up with a rabbi or a rebbe or a Rosh Yeshiva, somebody that can keep them inspired even when you have a rough day and even when you have a rough week. So we have to change that for them. We have to be able to show people that there's hope. There's always hope. Again, the minute you lose hope, it's all over. Hope is what keeps us going. Not just false, not some false Baba Maisa hope. Tell a guy you're broke. Don't worry, you could always win the lottery. That's not hope. That's stupidity. Yeah, no, listen. I said in the beginning that you're using hope as a slogan. Yeah. Even Obama had hope and change. Okay. It's not real hope is internal, where you truly believe that tomorrow could be better. And the more you think that way, the more possible it becomes, because you're not losing. Hope doesn't only lose the hope, it loses the ability to fight for right. Even today, psychologically, they prove that if a cancer patient believes that they can beat the cancer, there's a much better chance of them actually beating the cancer. They still have to take whatever meds they have to take, but if you believe you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. But if you believe you will make it, there's a much better chance that you will. It may not turn out exactly as you plan, but everyone deserves hope, especially hope in God. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, wanted his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren in Egypt to know that this exile is going to end and that redemption will happen. The good days are ahead of us, not behind us. And I'm not talking about American fakakta politics. It's a joke. American politics is like the small potatoes to the bigger picture. We always think in America that our stinky politics is like the whole world. It's not. There's something called life. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning. Was it the pursuit of happiness? Is above it. So don't try to pursue happiness. Try to pursue meaning, and then you'll find happiness. If you're pursuing happiness, you'll never find it. It's like honor. The Pirkei Avos says in Ethics of Our Fathers, those who chase honor runs away from them. Those who run away from honor chases them. You chasing happiness. If someone wakes up every day, how can I be happy today? They will never be happy. Because if every day you wake up looking for happiness, then yesterday's happiness isn't enough. You need to find new happiness. But if you're looking for meaning, if you're looking to have an internal, meaningful life that is productive for God and humanity, you'll always be happy because that's always available. And I'm not saying there won't be hard days, but that we have to switch the focus. It's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the pursuit of meaning. To think that Yaakov Avinu did what that grandfather did with the tree, he's like, you know what? I'm going to not only give my kids the wood they need, I'm going to give them the hope. And instead, we live in a society that is full with doomsday. You have doomsday professors, a whole day, pundits, a whole day they tell you, if I got $1 every time someone told me the Constitution was falling apart, and $1 every time someone told me, but if Iran waits one more day, we're all going to be annihilated, cut it out. The world is green. The mountains are snow-capped. There's nature, there's God, there's sustenance. You ate breakfast today, you had lunch today, you have a pair of clothing to wear, you have some heat in your house. You don't live in Mongolia. Maybe we should go to Mongolia to appreciate that we're not in a yurt, that we have a house with actually heat. So kvetching is easy. And losing hope is the easy way out. It's much harder to remain hopeful. It's not always easy to remain hopeful. Then we go to the people that can guide us to be hopeful. And there's enough out there today, locally and online, where people can learn and be guided to be hopeful. Again, not false hope, meaningful hope. And that's why it says in Psalms, King David says, Tzadik katamar yifrach, that the righteous will grow, will blossom like a cedar tree. We just spoke about the cedar tree. Why the righteous blossom like a cedar tree? Because God saw the generations of exile, not just the generation of the Egyptian exile, all generations today. And he said, you know what? People are going to lose hope. You know what we have to do? We have to implant in each generation cedar trees. Just like Jacob implanted the cedar trees, God implanted trees in every generation, and those trees are meant to be the hope. Those rabbis, those rebbes are there to be the beacons, not just of light, but beacons of hope for the generation, like the trees in Egypt were for the Jewish people in their time of exile. So when everyone's screaming, oh my gosh, what was that book as a kid? The sky is falling, Chicken Little. Yeah, the sky is not falling. This one's screaming at me that for 50 years already, they're telling me that I'm going to die from global warming and climate change. This one's telling me I'm going to die from Iran. This one's telling me that Israel's lost forever. Stop it. There's hope. There's beauty. It's phenomenal. For you people in the room in Bozeman, you were outside today. Did you see that beautiful sky? Did you see the incredible gifts from Hashem? If you're hungry, I'll give you food to take home tonight. But if you're not, recognize that the fact you have a refrigerator with food. No, let's complain because I couldn't get the Nike sneakers that some yo-yo on the internet for $900. I'm going to buy sneakers. American problems. I didn't. Did you want Nike sneakers? I thought it was just a Manny issue. Why? Javi said she was in the, Manny's not here. I could say this. Javi said she was in the airport in Florida this week, and Manny asked Javi to bring back a messy T-shirt for her. Yeah? Do you know how much they wanted in the airport for that? Guess. A T-shirt. 130.
Yeah.
You know where the T-shirt is? It's still in Miami in the airport. It was not.
That was the first mistake to buy at the airport. You could
I understand. You see, my point is that we were gifted, our generation, for me personally, we were gifted a Rebbe who taught us how to see the world with hope. And this is a Rebbe who lived through the Nazis. His own brother was murdered by the Nazis. His father was killed by the communists. He watched his entire generation almost totally annihilated. He saw it in Vichy when he was in France. He saw it in Berlin when he was in Berlin. He saw it in the former Soviet Union. But he wasn't he didn't have false optimism. It wasn't fake. It was a deep recognition that there's hope. There always is. It doesn't mean you're not realistic. It doesn't mean you don't recognize the challenges. It doesn't mean the challenges are going to last forever. They don't. They don't last forever. And so that's why the original leader of the Jewish community, Yaakov, what's the Hebrew word for a leader in the community? Till today, the president of Israel has that title. I don't like using it on the president because it should be saved for spiritual leaders. It's called Nasi. Nasi in modern Hebrew. Nasi is an acronym. We talked about acronyms before. Those 4 letters represent Nitzutzei Shel Yaakov Avinu, the spark of Jacob, our patriarch. 4 words. Spark of Jacob, our patriarch. The word Nasi, the word leader, stands, those 4 letters, for Nitzutzi Shel Yaakov Avinu. Because every leader in every generation, those cedars that are planted in each generation to give us hope, they are all the offsprings of the original one who planted hope, which was Jacob. So Abraham was phenomenal. Isaac was phenomenal. But the one who planted hope in the Jewish people, the one that not just gave us religion, gave us hope. I saw my friend today, Rabbi Sachs, Yankee Sachs in Long Island, on Long Island. He said, religion is made up of people who are scared of going to hell. Spirituality are for those that have been to hell. It was a very profound idea. You know, if you've been through hell, you're still in a relationship with Hashem. That's spirituality. You're working on your relationship. Being worried about going to hell, that's some kind of religious doctrine, some kind of organized religion thing. But that's really the key, is that every one of us in our lives individually have moments where we want to give up. I want to tell you something. There's no human being on earth. I know that's a very bold statement. There is no human being on earth that at some point in their life, at some particular instance or maybe it was more than one instance, they just wanted to give up. Whatever that means. Giving up could mean not getting out of bed. Giving up could be leaving your family and running away. Giving up could mean, God forbid, the worst thing, we actually give up on life itself, which is a terrible prohibition. Everyone has moments of wanting to give up. That's not a novelty. It doesn't make you special. It just makes you human. What makes the Jewish people special, what makes meaningful people special, is that in those moments of sorrow and in those moments of challenge and in those moments that feel absolutely hopeless, we seek hope. And we seek hope either internally, if we have the reservoir of it, and we have the fortitude to sort of focus in and say, hold on, what are you actually freaking out about? If you can't do it on your own, then you go to the Rebbe of the generation, you go to someone in your life that can be that voice of hope, be your cedar tree and say, sweetie, I know it's rough, but there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And believe it or not, the light is not a train coming towards you. It's a light that's very beautiful on the other side of it. That doesn't mean you're unrealistic. It doesn't mean you're fake. It just means you recognize an eternal truth. As I said in JLI yesterday, before every experience of light, there are severe forms of darkness. For the Jewish people, it's no different. Individually, it's no different. And we have to always be able to turn to the Jacobs and say, thank you for planting that tree so I can see light even when it feels very, very dark. And I know that even though today may have been very bitter and tough, tomorrow could be incredibly bright. And I hope for that. I believe in that. And I look forward to that. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful night. Be inspired, be uplifted, and stop watching television. Stop reading the newspaper. They're a bunch of doomsday liars. They tell you this 100 years and you don't have to waste your time and read it. Read something positive. Take a book of Torah. Take a book of Gemara. Take a book of Cedar. And stop with the stuff that just make you miserable. Yes, Trump, Obama, Biden, Clinton, whoever, Bush, none of them are your savior. None of them are going to be the solution. The solution